Personalizing student engagement is only possible when enrollment management and Marcom are aligned. At Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College, Ryan Hogan's team uses Element 451 to improve student outcomes.
They love the AI functions where if they're coming up with an email campaign, they can ask it to help develop something and then they go in and edit that. They also really enjoy the use of the landing pages for the campaigns that we build. So not only do we design emails and things, but we can also have landing pages that can give information to our students. And so they really brings the team together. So our enrollment staff is helping identify what the issue is, and then the marketing and communication staff can collaborate with them in Element to provide the solution for the problem we're trying to solve.
Aligned teams create better experiences for students. Visit element451.com to learn how an AI-first student engagement platform fuels a smarter, more connected campus experience. Welcome to Talking Tactics, a podcast that gets you results. Each episode features a single tactic, implemented with limited resources, that move the needle in some way. I'm your host, Day Kibbles, Vice President of Strategy at Ology, a marketing and branding agency for education. Join me every other week for discussions with some of the most clever folks in higher ed worldwide, doing the work day to day, just like you. Talking Tactics is part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, a leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Check them out at element451.com. Hello, folks. I'm your host, Day, and welcome back to Talking Tactics. Today, we're diving into a fundraising tactic that dramatically outperformed industry standards. My guest, Brenda Turner, used phone calls to boost direct mail solicitation response rates to 20%. Friends, that's compared to an industry average of just 1.5%. This is not just a slight improvement, it's a total game changer. Brenda brings over 16 years of nonprofit fundraising expertise and has helped raise nearly $1 billion through her work. She's a certified fundraising executive and contributes to key industry groups like the African American Development Officers Network and the Women of Color in Fundraising Association. On top of that, and this might be my favorite fact about you, Brenda, she's a professional opera singer. So if anyone knows how to capture attention and inspire action, it's her. Brenda, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am so glad you're here. I briefly debated asking you to sing something for us, but I mean, just think about it. Maybe at the end, maybe not. It's up to you.
We're going to laugh that off.
We're going to just move on. We're going to move on. All right. So this is a really impressive tactic you're going to talk to me about with two channels that I don't use often, the phone and the mail.
Mm-hmm.
So take me back. Take me and our listeners back to the situation you were in and what you were trying to do that led you to trying this combo, this phone-mail combo.
Yeah, sure. So I was working with an institution that was starting up programming in a brand new region. There were no regional donors in this area. The board of this organization was very sort of located on two opposite sides of the nation, and we're talking about something in the Midwest. And so there were no board members saying, "Oh, I know this person over there. I know that person." There were no easy ways in. Yeah, exactly. And so to start from scratch, I mean, there's only one way to do it. You just got to sort of put on your big girl panties and figure it out. And so being both, as you say, a soprano and a longtime fundraiser, hearing no, I just take that as a little bit of wind in my sails to keep pushing. And I wrote some pretty audacious letters to people I had never met. And then when they did not respond, I called them and got some more responses. And I mean, I think it works for two reasons. One, to your point, snail mail and phone calls are sort of outdated in a lot of people's minds. Like people don't respond to them. But in my case, I think I know for a fact it is the reason I got responses, the phone calls particularly.
I think it's because people don't expect it, right?
Exactly.
So I love this audacious letter thing. So can you, for the folks who might not be terrified to try this, can you walk us through what the letter said, how you followed up with the phone call, what you said on the phone?
Sure.
What did that look like?
Yeah. So it was sort of a packet of information. It wasn't just the letter. So the packet of information was, this is who we are. This is what we do. These are the people we serve, that sort of thing. So, but on the front part of it is I'm writing on behalf of so-and-so organization. Here's a broad overview of our plans in this specific area. But I think the paragraph that really got people was at the very end, I said, I realize this is an audacious letter. I realize I've never met you, but I don't mind being audacious on behalf of my community. I am a Black woman who grew up in a, I guess, lower middle class. My parents were in the military. I wasn't exactly poor in a lot of sense, but there were times when we went to the pantry. I was very blessed to have parents who made sure I got my education. And a lot of these kids don't have that same privilege, or they have parents who would love to help them and they just don't have the capacity to help them. So Brenda, do not mind embarrassing myself for the sake of those students. I don't mind, being very audacious, being very, not bullish, but I don't mind putting myself in that position. And I just stated that very clearly. And I had a donor who I got through that exercise who literally told me that was something that caught their attention and, made them pick up the phone when I called later on.
So I think this is a really important thing to reflect on, like a lesson to reflect on, that if you are connected to the cause that you're raising funds for, like if you find a way to make this kind of part of your own purpose, right? There's no shame in asking. There's no fear in asking because you believe in this, right?
Right. Totally.
And you can really talk about it confidently.
Yeah. And I mean, that in and of itself is a privilege. I've been able to only work in organizations where I feel that kind of connection. I do think it makes the work a lot easier to bear. But then picking up the phone, if I sent a mailing out, I don't remember the exact timing, but probably 6 weeks later, a month later, even not 6 weeks, probably, I started making phone calls. I left a lot of messages. One guy picked up the phone. It was I probably like the executive assistant to a family office or something. He was clearly on a run, did not recognize my phone number. I'm sure he regretted picking it up, but I got to have a conversation with him and he was like, yeah, I do remember seeing that. I'll get back to you. I never heard back from him. But, you make a connection and ultimately when they see you come up again, they remember that she was brazen enough to even call my phone. So these are things that I think have really, really helped. And in that same organization, they had someone on their list for like 2 years trying to figure out how to get an in, trying to figure out who knows who, sort of connect the dots. And I was like, well, did anybody call? And everybody looked at me like, no. So I called and I left a message and she called me back the next day. And she was like, nobody ever calls that phone number. What do you got going on? And they're a donor now.
No way.
Yeah.
What?
Seriously.
It can't be that easy.
It's not. It's not that easy. I mean, in this particular case, that really is what happened.
Wow.
And that said, it still took a year from that very first phone call to turn them into a donor. But to this day, I've never met this woman in real life. I've never had a video conference with her. I've only ever talked to her on the phone a couple of times and texted her and emailed a couple of times. But yeah, I wouldn't know if she came to my door right now. I would know that it was her.
Do you know what the team had tried before to get an in or a connection?
It was only through like board people.
Okay.
So there's, most places will have like sort of a wish list for their board. Like, do you know somebody in this area or whatever? And they were just sort of starting in this new location, they were just having a really hard time getting those ins.
Wow. I mean, it is brave. It is audacious, is your word, that you're like, well, I can do it. Like, I'll talk to them. I just love that because I remember I only spent 1 year in fundraising in my career. So I really admire what you do. And we are so protective of the big potential donors, right? Like nobody can talk to them. Only like the leadership that is super prepared can talk to them. And it kind of put this like fear in me to even reach out and address them. So I was really happy in my annual giving email world where I was just talking to 100,000 people at the same time. But I just love this. Well, it could be anyone from the organization. It doesn't have to be a board connection. Yeah.
1,000%. I mean, we just did a little brunch and learn at the organization. And, I think in the business, we say, everybody's a fundraiser at the organization, but it really is true. And a program person could be chit-chatting with a parent. I remember I worked at a small private school, and there was a teacher just chit-chatting with a new parent who, we'd done some research on, but didn't really have very much information. They were very, very private. And this teacher got a jewel of information that turned that gave us the red flag. Oh, that is a total major gift prospect. And she came and told us because, we're constantly saying everybody's a fundraiser, like always have this, sort of thing in the back of your head. And I think that when leadership says things like that, I get it to a certain extent, but I think it's to your detriment to not let everybody sort of be in a little bit on the background of how the work happens.
Yeah.
Lots of potential lost.
Yeah. Yeah. And from fear, right? So did you face any challenges like when pitching this idea or when doing the cold calling? Was anything a little bit awkward or didn't flow as well?
Sure. I mean, calling somebody you've never called is awkward. Cold calling is awkward. Period. I'm saying this like it's fun and like, oh yeah, it works and it does, but it is awkward. It's not.
How do you hype yourself up to make the call?
Well, I'm an actress. So I literally just put on a different facade. I become somebody who actually loves being hung up on. I become somebody who actually loves leaving a voice message. I become somebody who's not scared to talk to strangers. For me, it's like a little button that I push that I just become someone who I'm not naturally. But yeah, it is uncomfortable. And I always tell people, like, make your calls first thing in the morning. One, if somebody's going to pick up, they're going to pick up then. But usually they're like not even in the office yet and you can leave a message. And then if you leave a message, then you have a script. And so it sort of takes away the anxiety of having to answer a question or having to actually interact with somebody. So if you're averse to that, calling at like 8:00 in the morning, 7:30 even, the chances of you getting a voicemail at the office is a lot higher. And then you can follow up with an email if you have and be like, oh, just following up to my voicemail that I just left. And then they call you back. So then it's not as scary.
AI-powered and people-focused. This is the future of higher ed. Join us in Charlotte on June 24th and 25th for the 2025 Engage Summit. Learn how AI transforms student engagement by blending scalability and authenticity. Enrollify listeners get $50 off registration with code Enrollify50. Register now at engage.element451.com. So you mentioned having a script. Do you have any tips for our listeners when, like, if they're trying to create their little script for a phone call? What do you put on it? What could they use as support?
Sure. Take some bullets from the packet that you sent before the call, the packet that you mailed. So like take those sort of top bullet points. Especially if you're going to leave a voice message, you really have to practice that because you don't want it to be longer than about 30 or 35 seconds. And you also don't want to be speaking so fast that they can't understand what you're saying. So however you feel about AI, it's helpful in this instance, especially if your writing skills aren't the best or if, you're just not really sure how to start. So just give it a prompt, I'm a fundraiser at this organization. I just sent this packet of information to a donor I've never met. And now I need to call them and leave a voice message. That voice, you have to be really specific, but say, I need it to be under 30 seconds. Will you please give me 3 different options? And then it'll spit out some options for you and you can sort of go from there.
Oh my gosh. I think that is brilliant. That just removed all of my phone call anxiety. Like, I'm just going to read it. I don't have to think. I'm going to call and I'm going to read this thing and I don't have to think and freeze and be embarrassed.
Yeah, totally.
Oh, that's great. And I imagine you could use that. You could build that up sort of as a script. If they say, give me possible responses and what I could say to that, or possible questions they might have and what I might answer to that, right? Huh. Very clever. Very clever. All right. So I know we hinted at the 20% response rate and you getting responses. Can you talk to us about the results that you saw? How many letters did you send? How many people responded? How many phone calls did you make? How many people responded? So listeners can be inspired.
Yeah, for sure. So I sent about 30-ish letters. And so response rate, we're not saying positive response or negative response. We're just saying response altogether. Right?
Not ignored.
Right. And that's important. It's important to be able to cross people off the list as well. So you're not wasting time. So I got a good amount of people who definitely were like, yeah, please don't call again. No, we're not interested. Thanks, but no thanks. We got a number of those. But from that little, was it 30 or 32? I'm sorry, I don't have the exact numbers. I think we talked about it before, but
I think you said 37 before.
37. Okay.
Yes.
And so then we got back, I guess maybe it was about 10 people who were very much one way or the other. Out of that 37, we got 4 new donors. Wow. So it's really, compared to, big sort of broad-based giving sort of mailings, it's unprecedented that we would even get 4 major gift donors from such a small group from the beginning. I honestly was hoping for 1 because the amount of effort and money that it took to do that was so minimal, actually. Yeah. That doesn't include the research part to get to the 37, but still, it was such a small amount of time and effort used for ultimately, a couple $100,000 in gifts.
That's incredible.
Grants.
Like the return on investment on that is astounding when you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Majorly. And I still, the people who, said no, obviously I took them off the list, but I am still tapping on the people who didn't respond because you never know when they're going to respond. And since then, so it's been a year almost since I did that, so much has changed in the programming in the area. They might literally just be waiting for the right
opportunity
to respond. So they're still very much on my list. I haven't given up. Until I get an explicit no, it's a maybe.
So that's a lesson. If you're on the receiving end of something like this, just answer.
Yeah.
Just don't ghost. Just answer. Right?
You can curse me in your sleep, but I won't ever know because you haven't said anything.
I love this. Brave Brenda. I feel like we all need to be a little bit more like that.
I'm just saying.
Is there anything else you want to share about this tactic for anyone who might be curious to try it?
Yeah, I would say that the prep in the research is going to absolutely affect your response. So when I was saying that the effort was fairly minimal, the execution of it was absolutely fairly minimal. But the research involved with getting that down to 37, that's the time intensive part, because you want to make sure that whenever you are calling somebody on the phone to talk to them, that there is a certain level of confidence that what you're selling is something that they need. So it's easy to get a lot of no's if you're just sort of throwing spaghetti on the wall. But if you're, you want to make fettuccine, you want to make sure you're putting fettuccine on the wall and not angel hair, So
at least choose your pasta, people.
Yeah.
Choose your pasta. I love it. Now I'm going to I'm going to want to have pasta for dinner tonight.
Hey, it's Friday. Carbs are allowed.
Carbs are allowed. Well, thank you so much for sharing this. One of my favorite things about the show is how simple some of these tactics are and how effective they are, and how folks that listen, they feel really inspired to try, because it doesn't sound so hard. It requires a lot of bravery, though.
That's true.
Yeah. So if folks want to contact you, maybe to ask more or get your tips, where can they find you?
BrendaMarieTurner.com.
Yes.
Or LinkedIn, which is also
Right.
Brenda Marie Turner.
Awesome. And both of those things will be in the show notes along with Brenda's full bio. So you can follow her, friend her, and listen to that amazing performer voice that you have. That's the end of our episode today, folks. Thank you for listening. And remember to follow and subscribe to keep walking the walk and talking the tactics. The Talking Tactics podcast is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions pros find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts, like Jamie Hunt, Allison Tercio, Jenny Lee Fowler, Jeremy Tiers, and so many of your other favorite leaders in higher ed too. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Check them out at element451.com.